Have you ever felt completely just exhausted trying to prove you are, above average? Like, just to feel okay about yourself?
Oh, absolutely.
Right. Like, if you're not the smartest person in the room or the most productive or, I don't know, the most put together, it feels like your worth just plummets.
Yeah, and that feeling, it isn't a personal failing at all. It's actually, it's a design flaw in how society taught us to view ourselves.
Which is wild to think about.
It is. I mean, we've spent decades worshiping at the altar of self-esteem, right?
Yeah.
But the latest clinical and psychological research, it actually suggests that chasing self-esteem is exactly what's making us so miserable and, frankly, fundamentally insecure.
And that's exactly what we're getting into today. Welcome to today's deep dive, where we are looking at this massive shift from chasing self-esteem to practicing genuine self-compassion and self-love.
Yeah, we have a really diverse stack of sources for this one.
We really do. We've got clinical research from Dr. Kristen Neff, therapeutic workbooks on cognitive restructuring, plus transcripts from various self-development podcasts and expert guides on mental health.
It's a lot of ground to cover.
It is. But our mission today is to decode what self-love actually looks like in practice, discover why trying to boost your self-esteem might be backfiring on you, and, equip you with practical tools to build a resilient relationship with yourself.
Which is so important. Because like you mentioned at the start, we were all raised to believe self-esteem was this, ultimate psychological armor.
Right. I mean, schools had dedicated programs for it. Parents were told to praise every little thing we did to build it up.
Exactly. But when you dive into the clinical research, specifically Dr. Kristen Neff's work, you quickly realize that self-esteem is built on a mathematically impossible foundation.
Wait, mathematically impossible? How so?
Well, it's entirely reliant on a process of comparison and superiority.
Yeah.
So to have high self-esteem, you generally have to feel like you are better than the people around you.
Oh.
Yeah. You are constantly evaluating your social rank. Dr. Neff highlights this psychological phenomenon known as the Lake Wobegon effect.
Okay, I read about this in the notes, and the statistics are hilarious, but also a little terrifying.
They really are. It's basically the human tendency to completely overestimate our own achievements.
Right, like the driving stat. Fully 90% of drivers think they are more skilled than their peers.
Which is mathematically impossible.
Exactly. And that data actually includes people who recently caused a car accident.
Yes.
They are literally sitting there with a crushed fender, still totally convinced they're superior drivers to everyone else on the road.
And that delusion is kind of required to maintain self-esteem. When our self-worth depends on being above average, we naturally start inflating our own self-evaluations.
Which makes sense.
But worse, we start actively putting others down just to maintain our own fragile egos. The pursuit of high self-esteem, it often leads to narcissism, a lack of personal responsibility, and a sense of self-worth that just shatters into a million pieces the moment you experience a legitimate failure.
Because if your worth is tied to being the best, what happens when you inevitably aren't?
Right. You crash.
So it's this fragile, comparison-based trap, which brings us to the scientifically backed alternative, which is self-compassion.
Yes, and Dr. Neff breaks this down into 3 distinct pillars.
Okay, let's go through them.
First is self-kindness. That's choosing to respond to your own flaws with gentleness rather than harsh criticism. Second is common humanity.
Which is recognizing that failing is a universal human experience, right?
Exactly. It cuts through that awful feeling of isolation when you make a mistake. And the third pillar is mindfulness, which is the ability to observe your pain clearly without over-identifying with it or getting swept away by a catastrophic storyline.
And the underlying biology of this shift is what makes it so powerful. You aren't just reciting happier thoughts.
No, not at all.
You are literally altering how your brain processes stress and threat.
This is my favorite part of the research. Relying on self-esteem actually activates the brain's alerting and energizing impulses, which are driven by dopamine.
Because it's all about maintaining social rank.
Yes. So if that social rank is threatened, say you get passed over for a promotion, your limbic system, which is your primitive threat detection center, it just fires right up.
So your brain essentially processes a professional setback or even a social faux pas as if a literal physical predator is in the room.
Exactly. You become hyperdefensive because your actual survival feels threatened.
That explains so much about how defensive people get over small critiques at work.
Totally. But self-compassion, operates on a completely different neural pathway. It deactivates that threat system and activates the mammalian self-soothing system.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, this pathway involves oxytocin and opiates, so it creates feelings of safety, warmth, and secure attachment.
And there's experimental evidence for this too, right?
Brilliant evidence. Researchers put subjects through highly stressful mock job interviews, or they recorded them giving an introduction and then handed them neutral or slightly critical feedback.
And the people who relied on self-esteem absolutely crumbled.
They did.
Because to them, being called average or fine is a massive insult.
Right. They became highly defensive, anxious, and hostile. But the subjects who practiced self-compassion handled the exact same feedback with remarkable emotional stability.
Wow.
Because their threat systems weren't activated, They could admit their flaws and take the feedback constructively without their entire sense of identity collapsing.
Okay, but I can hear the skeptic in the back of my mind raising an objection here.
Let's hear it.
Isn't self-compassion just kind of a fancy excuse for self-pity or extreme self-indulgence?
People ask that all the time.
Like, if I am endlessly gentle with myself, won't I just lose all my drive, sit on the couch all day eating ice cream, and give up on my goals? We are taught that we need that harsh inner voice to achieve anything in life.
That is the most common hesitation people have. But the research shows the exact opposite is actually true. True self-compassion does not equal self-indulgence.
Okay, so how does it work then?
A great way to understand the mechanism is to think of a deeply caring parent. A truly loving parent doesn't let their child eat ice cream for every meal, skip school, and avoid all challenges.
Right, because that would actually harm the child in the long run. They push the child to do their homework and eat their vegetables out of love.
Exactly, because they want them to thrive and be healthy, not because they want to punish them. The motivation is love, not fear.
That's a huge distinction.
It is. People who practice self-compassion actually show much greater personal initiative to make needed changes in their lives. They still have high standards, and they still work hard, but they're motivated by a genuine desire to reach their potential.
Rather than being driven by a terrifying fear of failure.
Yes. They're caring for their future selves, not running from worthlessness.
So self-compassion is the healthy baseline, replacing the threat response with a safety response.
Right.
So how do we build on that to reach actual self-acceptance and eventually self-love?
Well, therapist Liz Davis outlines a very clear 3-step framework for this journey in our sources. Step 1 is developing that self-compassion we just discussed. But the mechanism for doing that requires you to first pause long enough to actually witness your own suffering.
Which requires hitting the brakes.
Yes, it did that.
But our culture completely penalizes hitting the brakes. I mean, we are deeply entrenched in this productivity-obsessed hustle and grind matrix.
Completely.
If we feel emotional pain or burnout, the societal instinct is to push through it, pour another cup of coffee, and answer 10 more emails.
We drown out our own internal signals with endless to-do lists and distractions.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. You cannot apply compassion to an injury you refuse to look at. You have to sit with the discomfort first. And once you can do that, you move to step 2, which is developing self-acceptance.
And what does that look like practically?
This requires actively stopping the endless loop of comparison, especially the curated lives we see on social media, and directly confronting the inner critic.
You know, the double standard of that inner critic is fascinating to me.
How so?
Well, if a friend makes a mistake at work, we immediately offer grace. We tell them it's just one day, they're brilliant, it's going to be fine.
Right.
But when we make that exact same mistake, we hurl verbal abuse at ourselves in our own minds. Like, you're an idiot, you're so lazy, everyone is judging you.
It's brutal.
It is. It's like we've got a drill sergeant in our heads for ourselves, but we're a best friend to everyone else. We treat our friends with absolute grace, but we treat ourselves like an enemy.
And overcoming that double standard is what pushes you into step 3, which is developing self-love. And Davis frames this in a really profound way. She argues that practicing self-love is actually a radical political act.
A political act?
Yeah, it's a rebellion against an economic system designed to profit off our insecurities.
Oh, that makes so much sense. I mean, every advertisement tells us we are inadequate as we are, that we need to buy a certain anti-aging cream or drive a specific car or achieve a certain corporate title to be worthy of love and respect.
And if you actually choose to love yourself as you are, you don't need to buy their fixes.
Wow.
That ties directly into the concepts discussed by self-development experts like Maria from our transcript sources, who points out that worth is innate, not earned.
Hustle culture definitely lies to us about that.
It does. It embeds the belief that your worth is equal to your daily productivity output. But your worth is actually like the air you breathe. It's just there.
You are fundamentally worthy even when you rest, and you are worthy even when you fail miserably.
Exactly.
Okay, theory is wonderful, but let's talk about the mechanics of reality.
Let's do it.
Say I bomb a presentation at work, or I miss a massive deadline, and suddenly I am spiraling. How do I actually intervene in that moment when the drill sergeant in my head wakes up and grabs the microphone?
So we can turn to cognitive restructuring for this. It's a highly practical tool detailed in therapeutic workbooks designed to interrupt an automatic, vicious, psychological chain reaction.
I imagine this is a really rapid sequence of events.
Incredibly rapid.
You miss that deadline, and before you even have time to process the actual business impact, your brain has jumped straight to, I am a complete failure.
That is the exact sequence. It starts with a triggering event, right? Missing the deadline. That sparks an automatic